What is happening, everybody? I'm looking fuzzy. I hope you're feeling fuzzy. I hope you're celebrating today. I hope you're having a great time with family and friends, or chilling in your own way and just, celebrating you and where you are right now, and all the wonderful things we have to be happy about and celebrate. So tonight is a really interesting night. It's Monday Madness. Anything can happen, right? Welcome, 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 all you wonderful gatekeepers. Look at all you terrific people in Mairead, Ann, Donnie, Lindsay, how you doing? Brown Dwarf, welcome in. Sean, welcome, welcome. And Edna, terrific to see you guys. Who's seeing fireworks? I bet you there's going to be a few tonight. Just saying. And if not because of the wonderful energies we have on the show tonight, I do have a little bit of clip of some here in New Jersey that somebody really lucky got to go and see. And I have a little bit of clip if you've never seen a concert under the fireworks before. I have a clip for you. But first, let's get our favorite, oh gosh, Steve Stockton. He's been so busy. I can't even believe he's got time to sit down and listen to me yammer on about stuff. Get in here, Steve. How you doing, baby?
Hey, what's up? How's everybody doing?
Another Monday, Steve.
Been a week since this time a week ago I was at the beach with Sandy.
What?
I'm still
Sandy?
decompressing. What a
Why
trip.
does that sounds like a song, At the Beach with Sandy. Wasn't that, didn't they make a movie? Didn't John Travolta have a song about that?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Happy 4th, my love.
Happy 4th, happy Independence Day.
Yep.
Thanks to all our servicemen and women, because
Absolutely.
freedom isn't free.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sitting here trying to get sage
Yeah.
going. I got 3 sticks that keep going out, but I think I've got something here for that. 1 second. I'm so behind on everything.
To be here, I'm still
shifted
playing
on me.
catch up too.
Here we go. Here we go.
There we go. Happy 4th, everybody.
Everybody, listen. It's a wonderful time, and I got so lucky last minute to throw this in. Do you want to see a little smidge of what this rotten brat got to go do last night for his birthday? My son got to go with his brother to see Flogging Molly in Asbury Park, New Jersey, on the boardwalk at the Stone Pony under the stars. And this is a little bit of what it looked like. You want to see that, Steve? It's going to be great.
Yeah, roll that beautiful bean footage.
Here we go, sweetheart. Look at this.
States of America on the 4th of July. We'd like right now to do another brand new song for you, okay? This is a song about the men, women and children who got Ireland their freedom back in 1916, okay? Because New Jersey, if we can have freedom in Ireland, believe me, we can have freedom anywhere on this planet, okay? So as I said, this is a new song. It's a new thing we call.
Isn't that fantastic?
Looks like there was a few people showed up for that.
Oh my goodness, the fireworks. They had such a hard time. They said just keeping the beat with all the fireworks going off. They said that they never had anything like that before. But I thought you guys would enjoy seeing a little piece of all that if you didn't get a chance to see the fireworks. It's great to see it because everybody's celebrating good. Let them have it.
And I've seen Flogging Molly before. They put on a hell of a show.
Oh yeah.
If you're anywhere near the driving distance, go see them.
I saw him at the Electric. Oh, what's that place in Pennsylvania? I bet you I have somebody in here that can tell us, Steve. What's the name? Starland Ballroom, is it? I don't know. Let's ask him. Mr. Seriah Azcath from Where Did the Road Go? Welcome in, sweetheart.
Hey.
Hey. What's the name of that club?
What club?
Right outside of Philly. It's something electric company?
Electric Factory.
There it is. Yep.
Of course, Seriah knows.
I saw Flogging Molly there.
I saw Sisters of Mercy there. That was it.
Oh, I bet that was a good show.
No, it was terrible, actually.
Was it?
The sound was just mud.
Yeah. I won tickets to see Joe Bonamassa. Was absolutely thrown back thrilled because I love his blues stuff. Love his blues band. Love that whole tour, the whole bluesy, and the Beth Hart stuff. Love it. Win tickets, and I go, and he's playing with, what was the name? I think it was BBC. It was the guy from Deep Purple, the singer. wearing nothing, velvet and black lace he was wearing. Did nothing. He just screamed the whole time.
Is it Richie Blackmore or?
No. He was a
Ian
guitar
Gillan?
player. I think, is that possible? I don't want to get my names wrong.
Ian Gillan. Yeah,
Ian Gillan.
He was
in Black
about as
Sabbath
old as
for a while,
Jagger.
too.
I can't even remember. The whole time I had, the sound in there, and I'm at the bar. My hands over my ears. I was like 4 feet from Bonamassa, though. The man can play, he really can. But it was just different. He likes to pepper through different bands, But I know everybody here loves music. We're all from different generations, but I'll tell you what, music is the universal language, I think, and definitely things that resonate across lines that other things can't, and I think it's awesome. I mean, I remember, Seriah, you're gonna love this. I'm sitting on the floor of my best friend's high school friend's room. Her sister works for a radio company, a radio station, and her job is to help listen to new albums, new demos, to see whether or not they should go for the next step. And we're going through a stack of actual albums, and we're playing, you play a couple different songs, and throw it in one side. The only album I was holding at the end of the whole thing, had to have been 25, 30 albums, was the Ramones debut. And I said, this one right here, and I was right. So how's everybody doing? Anything special this weekend y'all did? Just chilling?
Not for me. I'm still recuperating from the road trip. We were on the road about a week and stayed on the move the whole time.
Gosh,
even the
Steve.
4 days at the beach, we were out filming stuff and this, that, and the other, and covered a lot of area up there in Washington State. We hit Yakima, we hit Tacoma, Olympia, Aberdeen, and then way up the coast, several different of those beach towns, all the way up to Westport. So it was a great trip.
Sounds awesome. You've been so busy, and I know you've got a lot more coming. What's the very next one you're doing? Is it
Very next one, Dogman Cryptid Conference
Let me
in
pull
Paris,
that up for you,
Tennessee.
Steve. I don't know if Seriah has seen this. I know he'd be interested. This one right here. I know you've interviewed a lot of these people, Seriah. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
There you go, Steve. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. First annual Dogman Cryptid Conference. That's sponsored by Josh Taylor, Paranormal Roundtable. He's going to be speaking. The host is Ken Gerard. And then you can see the luminaries there. Ron Murphy, Nick Redfern, Bettina Moss, Barton Nunley. He's a character I like Barton.
Yeah.
Nick Valente, Jody Cook, Tony Merkel, Jay Vault-Tucker, Kenny Irish, the punk cryptozoologist, Elijah Henderson, David Weatherly, Mr. Black-Eyed Kids. He loves it when you call him that. Actually hates it. But
Grinning man, yeah.
Kumbo Baker, D.A. Roberts, and yours truly are going to be there. Sandy's going to be with me. It's going to be a fun weekend. VIP meet and greet is on Friday, and then the conference is on all day Saturday.
Outstanding. Busy. I love to see this. I mean, don't you, Seriah, that he's out there and getting all this. Everybody, I'm blown away by the talent, and I think I'm seeing maybe more. I'm paying more attention, but it seems to me a lot of people are reaching outside the box and maybe going for their dream, or at least a portion of it. Have you been seeing that? Like a lot more podcasts, a lot more books, a lot more, or are we just noticing it more?
No, I think there's more of it. I think people are getting a little more open-minded and not stuck in the boxes that they were, because the boxes didn't actually get us anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be people stuck in those boxes, but more and more people are going, "Oh, that's interesting. What if we step outside that box a little?"
How cool! What an interesting thought, Steve. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes, like with the stuff I'm doing, you've got to step outside that personal comfort zone. You never know what you can do till you try. When I went to the UFO conference in March in San Francisco, that's the first time I'd actually spoken in front of a live crowd in person. I've done it via video when the COVID was going on, but
right.
It went great, and now just there's no stopping me. Auburn, Washington, in October, going to be the Pacific Northwest True Crime Fest. Up there, we're launching a true crime channel as a sister channel of Missing Persons and Mysteries. So, a lot of good stuff going on, and can't wait. I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah, and that's it. You know,
Good.
you're a prime example of that, reaching outside, and, you've talked a lot of people out of it too, like we said earlier when we had the other episode. I mean, you guys talked me into writing the book, and so many other people, Mark Wyatt and, so many other people, and it's just great now that we can reach out, maybe not even like-minded people, but like Seriah said, people's consciousnesses are kind of being raised. I think we're all in this kind of whatever you want to call it, whether we're just able to find each other easily now. We don't have to just bump into somebody at a conference or whatever. We've got all this wonderful information all over, the interwebs and everything else. We can just reach out and grab it. And like right now, in this chat, the people that are listening to us, I mean, it's fantastic that we have an episode, and then you go back and you look at the chat that you might have missed, and some of the ideas they're throwing out make you rethink. We were just talking about Amityville hoax, or hoax or real, what's going on. Everybody's got a different story over the decades. So many
That was a great show last
shifted.
Monday. Sandy and I had so much fun with that.
Oh,
We
gosh, it
talked
was.
about it afterwards, and then we
So much
started
fun.
watching Amityville 2
Did
after
you?
the show was over. Yeah,
I think they're up to like 24 different movies. I can't even tell you the
It's
name of the number
crazy.
of the books.
It is crazy.
It's crazy. And to watch DeFeo's last interview, I don't know if anybody has seen that, but this guy could, you talk about pathological, and the way he could go back and forth and lie, and then you just see him kind of change, and you feel like you get a little bit of a truth, but that's also something he's developed. So it's
He
just
tells a
like-
different story just
like
about in
picking
any
through.
interview I've ever seen him in.
Yeah, it's like picking through stuff. But the thing was, is we were talking about that red room, and why would anybody just paint a little tiny room like that? Right? There's not really enough room to do anything in, except photography development. And we thought that maybe, since a lot of times they develop pictures with the red light back in the day, the 35 millimeter, the wet development, that maybe somebody did something like that for a tiny little photography, developing and stuff. That was huge in the 60s and 70s. People were turning bathrooms, they were very into.
My dad had a dark room
Mm-hmm.
out in the garage when I was a kid. Of course, he worked as a photographer out at the National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, but he did his own stuff at home. And the first picture I ever made, I developed a black and white print myself out in our garage. It was awesome. It was neat to learn the process and the enlarging and the fixing and washing and all that. It's a lost art now, though, with everything digital. There's still people shooting film, but it's not like it used to be.
Gosh, back in the late 60s and 70s, everybody, if you had a 35 millimeter camera, you were the shit. You were taking pictures of everything. And they hung them up on the string to dry them and everything. It makes sense, but I hadn't thought about it. And that's why I think, having a live chat and everybody listening, or, hey, I heard this, or, did you hear this guy's, read this guy's memoirs or deathbed confession or whatever, it can really add some flavor to anything you're listening to. I think it's just
absolutely.
great. Now, do you do a lot of live, Seriah, or is everything you do recorded?
Almost everything's recorded at this point. I haven't done a live show since pre-COVID.
Yeah. And it's great to have that interaction, and then, even to go back and try to, a lot of stuff I miss, when it's going by, because I'm trying to pay attention to the guest or the situation and really get in deep conversation, and I miss it. So we started going back and back and looking at the chat, Steve and I, and we started doing something called a gallery of resurrected renderings from our gatekeepers. So you get to sit through about 7 minutes.
Cisco loves those long titles, in case you hadn't guessed.
Well,
terrible.
so do I.
It's okay. We're kindred spirits, right? Sometimes you just can't say everything you want to say in a couple of words, man.
That's true.
It's just sometimes it needs a little more. But anyway, I'm proud to present the third episode. Steve, we played this last night, honey, but you didn't get to see it. And I know this is like one of your favorite segments of the show. So we're going to play it again for anybody who didn't get to see it last night. Jamie, I see you in here. Welcome. Vixen Doe. Sue, I don't think you got to see it. Salvador didn't. So here we go. If you don't mind Seriah sitting through this, you're welcome. No. Here we go.
scream unheard.
He will scream unheard,
The
Steve.
Haunting. What do we really know of that other world of
Fantastic.
hauntings, of apparitions in the night, of the sinister powers of darkness?
Good pick.
The Haunting was produced and directed by Robert Wise, the brilliant producer of West Side Story, and stars Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson, Russ Tamblyn.
Jeebus,
Not deny
Steve.
terror.
Yeah.
You cannot look the other way. You have to face the supernatural, face the chilling mysteries of forces you cannot understand or control. When The Haunting holds you in its spell. The Haunting.
Hey, Blue. Face the supernatural, everybody. Ooh. Like that. Figured it out. Creepiest thing anybody's ever said in the chat, I think. Right on time. Everybody's always saying hello. Everybody's in there. First moment, you're gonna have to explain that one. Lindsay, this for you. Here you go again, honey. Billy Jack. Absolute badass.
I need a hat like that.
I do too. I just love him. Here it is, Steve. That famous quote. Best part of that movie. And I got a shot of it. There it is. Actually, they're all good. I think Billy Jack was one of the best though. If you haven't seen it, go look up Billy Jack. It's fantastic. I think we all love hats, Aunt Edna. We love our gatekeepers, man.
And the thing about Billy Jack, it wasn't that he had super fantastical kung fu powers.
Your new
It was
tie.
that he never washed his feet.
Oh, God.
It makes you look very handsome.
Kept them extra strong. That's my favorite kitty time. We love you, everybody. Keep sending in those chats. Keep spreading that bacon. Keep helping each other out in the chat. We love you. Thank you guys so much. That's for y'all. Lots of love and bacon. There you go.
Oh, that was awesome.
Woo!
Billy Jack, that brings back the memories. The first time that
We're a
aired,
little
ever
crazy,
aired
Seriah.
on network television, the next day at school, every kid was out on the playground kicking the shit out of every other kid. It just,
Oh, Billy Jack.
it was, yeah. It was an influence. Same with Evil Knievel. The Evil Knievel was on TV. Every kid's jumping their bike over stuff and things.
Absolutely.
But we lived to tell the tale. We didn't wear knee pads. We didn't wear helmets. We didn't care.
Absolutely. The thing about it, it was very rare when I got to go to the movies. Mom was single, single mom. I got to go to the theater to see Billy Jack. I would not let up. It was that one and Chariots of the Gods. Had to see him. I mean, in that whole time in the early 70s. And I remember when they played One Tin Soldier by the Coven. at the end of that movie, and everybody was standing up with their fist as they carted Billy Jack off in the police car. I stood up in the theater with my fist up. I was like 10. And my mom just looked at me. She didn't like yank on my coat or pull me down or anything. She let me. She didn't stand up next to me and do it because that would have been a wholly different story. But she, it was cool. And the whole time back from Chariots of the Gods, we talked about it.
Yeah, 110 Soldier, man, that was something else. Remember, I had a little tiny electric organ that I got for Christmas when I was a kid. That was the first song I ever learned to play on it. Just one note at a time,
Really?
You know,
110 Soldier? Wow. What was it like for you, Seriah, when you were, did you have people you could talk about this stuff and ask questions and bounce stuff off of? Any adults at all?
I just read books.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
My parents encouraged it, so, that was good, but they didn't know anything or really care.
Yeah. I remember asking questions. I remember being able to get the occult books out of the library of the school. Pickings were slim. But, and asking my mom, and she would talk to me, but then again, I lost her at 12. So between 12 and whenever I started getting into, being a late teenager and adult, being able to just talk a little bit about stuff. But everything was still like even hushed in the 80s. I think the internet really opened things up. And I can remember when, I think it was Sightings. It was either Sightings or That's Incredible that started this whole database. You can probably remember when America's Most Wanted did it, where the guy would walk through, I forget his name, Walsh, would walk through all the computers and people were like picking up answering phones like we have somebody, like it was a telethon or something.
Yeah.
I can remember back to where it was Sightings and they had this, you can call in with your experiences and things like that. They were working on things like the Sally House. That was big. What was the show for you? Was there a show for you, Seriah? Anything that clicked in?
I literally recorded anything I could get on that stuff. So anytime a current affair or Inside Edition ran something, I recorded it. So it was anything that was about metal, the paranormal, or wrestling. And I still have all those VHS tapes. I'm slowly converting them. I'm gonna put them up for my patrons at some point because there's just tons of clips. Anytime Sally Jesse Raphael or Morton Downey Jr. did a show, I recorded it.
Oh gosh, yes.
And I loved Sightings. In Search of. There was Arthur C. Clarke's Strange World or something like that.
Fantastic. Great documentaries. Yep.
And I don't know, a handful of others that I can't remember the names of right now.
Mm-hmm.
Unsolved Mysteries used to run some paranormal segments.
And I have all those clips too.
I can if I go back as far as I can go, remember being little and running past the TV because the adults were watching something. Because then when I was little, TV was furniture. It was the big Zenith on the floor with the, I almost got killed by a Zenith TV. I don't think I've ever told you that. There was a story around my family that was famous. I was at the babysitter's across the street, and she had a teenage daughter, teenage son, and he was a football player. And every time it got brought up, he'd tell the story of, I crawled under the Zenith, and I hit the leg, and there was just a leg propped up to hold the TV, and I kicked it out with my foot, and the TV was about to fall on me. He dove and caught it.
Wow.
So, and apparently I was like, I was crawling. I was a baby, an infant, And so, I mean, they were furniture. Those things were huge. And I'm running by, and I'll stop, and I'd catch something like Outer Limits or One Step Beyond.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those are great.
Brought to you by, Alcoa Aluminum. I'll never forget it. I remember. And the other one was, what was the one with was it Night Gallery?
Night Gallery was Serling.
Oh, gosh, so good.
That was one of my favorites when I was real small. 'Cause even though it was fictional, it was scary as hell.
Yeah, they did a bunch of Lovecraft stuff in there, too.
Yeah?
And,
now, which episodes leaned? I'm interested in.
They did the
Cool Air, Pigman's Model.
I Sing the Body Electric. Was that Lovecraft?
No,
or was that Bradbury?
Bradbury.
Bradbury. Okay, that was wild.
Also,
Just the name.
Johnny Cho didn't know I still am a wrestling fan. That was.
Yes, I was gonna say. I think I heard Donnie Cho fall off his chair when you said that. Let's see if I can pull that back up.
I, I,
Donnie.
I I always feel like
Yep.
I'm really into
There
the
we go.
three sort of like the outcast things: metal, wrestling, and the paranormal.
Yep. Yep. You know, that was something because that was the perfect combo when I was in high school. You know, it wasn't as prominent where a lot of metalheads, because I was in a metal band. So we were doing stuff like oh gosh, Bebop Deluxe, Tangerine Dream, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, stuff like that at the time. And a lot of that stuff was just being introduced to me at the time, because when I went home, I was listening to Loggins of Messina and Seals and Crofts and Meatloaf, and some other stuff. I was eclectic. I was finding my stuff. So
Right.
it was, and then there was the big punk scene, and I mean the severe punk, like CBGB's punk, the safety pins, the whole shebang. That was blooming. Like I said, we were demoing records, and Ramones hadn't even come out yet. The Dead Boys and stuff were over at CBGB's along with Blondie and, actually my husband in the Big Fat Pet Clubs from Outer Space. They were the only other ones other than Blondie to play all 3 decades of CBGB's, which is, if you've ever been to CBGB's, it's something really to sing home about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That place was a hole.
It was a sewer, and there was dog shit all over the floor.
Everywhere. And I can't believe people ate the chili, man. Talk about your horrors. That's real life horrors right there. Welcome in, Kevin. Welcome, Salvador. If I didn't say hi to you, I know I'm just getting to some of you. Ian, welcome. I don't want you to think you're being ignored. Joey, welcome. So that's the thing. Shows when I think it almost has to be Dark Shadows, because I watched that with my grandmother. With Barnabas Collins, and everybody in there was just so reluctant.
I'd hide behind the couch and watch that one.
They were just real reluctant, very much like the old werewolf movies, where he didn't want to be the werewolf. It was like, oh, geez, a full moon, he'd go around and start chaining himself to stuff. I mean, I felt horrible for the early Wolfman. And now we've got Dogman and Skinwalkers and Rougarous. We've come a long way, baby. And Rougarous are proud to be. I mean, but isn't that funny? And like I said, if I dig back as far as I can go to the old black and whites, I think that One Step Beyond scared the heck out of my sisters. Twilight Zones scared the hell out of my sisters. But it was the deep thinking ones. It was the one where all the guy wanted to do was be left alone and read. And then what happened? Was there an explosion, a nuclear something? Yeah. And then his glasses broke and he couldn't read, but he had all the books.
Gets to the library, pulls his glasses out, and they're shattered. Yeah, that was just, feel that angst. But yeah, we're talking about the Wolfman, Lyle Talbot. You can't help but feel sorry for the guy. He didn't want to be the Wolfman. He just wanted to be normal. And I prefer Lon Chaney Jr.'s take on it to anybody else. I know Benicio del Toro did it in the remake, but Lon Chaney's hard to beat.
The old stuff. Something about the old stuff. I think it was extra thought put in it. I can go back and dig and get an old black and white movie, and I'd say that because, I mean, gosh, they're going back to the 30s. Mm-hmm. Look at A Time of Their Lives, Abbott and Costello. I mean, that's a fantastic historical, fairly historically accurate ghost movie. It really is. They get, wrongfully accused, called traitors, their bodies thrown in the well, they're cursed by this, officer who curses them for all eternity, for being traitors against George Washington. And, when they were really going to warn Washington about Benedict Arnold in West Point. And, I mean, it's 1938. I think it is. If not, it's early 40s. I could be off a couple of years, but I'm not too far. And that's Abbott and Costello, funny as all get out. but it also has its serious tones too. There's a seance in there. Steve was great enough, I think it was last Halloween or last Christmas, you sent that to me and we played it here and we all got to watch it. But it is that not a terrific movie, guys? And that's
It
what
is
I'm
for an
about.
Abbott and Costello movie. I mean, if it didn't have the humorous parts in it, it would almost be a documentary, talking about
They had
ghosts
it
and the
right.
paranormal and the way that
I
things
feel.
happen and the way they hang around and as far as intelligent hauntings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, about you guys growing up, you're a couple, close, but, within 20 years, I'd say, right? Am I close? Maybe,
I
give or
think so.
take. So, if you're going back to these early childhood things, the things where you were close up against the TV, you really had to see, like you said, for you it was wrestling.
Well,
I was there. I know what a Frankensteiner is.
I, d-
I
didn't
had
get
boys.
I didn't get into wrestling until just before it got really big in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
Had never seen it prior to that. Prior to that, I was really into anything sci-fi. I liked the Godzilla type movies, any of that kaiju
Oh,
stuff.
gosh.
But yeah, one day I just happened. I was at a friend's house. Wrestling happened to be on, and I was like, "What is this? This is awesome!"
It is too, Kippy. And it's all like this theatrical, almost vaudevillian
Yeah,
a kind of thing. And I remember when I took my sons, they were probably 10 and 8, somewhere around in that age, and I got them wrestling tickets, and we went and saw Undertaker, and so many different ones. I mean, it was amazing. Goldberg, different people like this. And that was the era for them, But it's a trip. Yeah,
I don't know what's going on with my
it was a
camera
lot
there.
better than I'm watching Jackass.
Yeah.
Jackass, they're, sliding off the roof with, on garbage can lids and landed in.
When I was a kid, we had like Professor Tortanaka, Mr. Fuji, the Mongolian Stomper, some of those guys. Ronnie Garvin,
Wow.
Bob Armstrong, Terry Armstrong, whatever his name was. And they had a local wrestling show in Knoxville on Saturdays. Those guys would be out at the Jacobs Building at Chilhowie Park, and wrestling would be live from there. Took my nephew to it one time. It was like I was probably 10 or 11 or something. He was like 6 or 7, and he had a great time. And we got spit on by the Mongolian Stomper.
I got kind of tired of it when the WWE turned into a cartoon, or WWF back then turned into a cartoon. The NWA, WCW was good, and then they brought Hogan in, and that just tanked, and I stopped watching it for a while, but then I found Lucha Libre, and ECW started up, and ECW was everything I ever wanted in wrestling. It was violent and bloody and not aimed at kids, and it just felt like absolute chaos watching it, and I actually know some of the guys that were there. Did a bunch of interviews, went to a bunch of shows, which always felt, there was Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins once said, going to an ECW show felt like you were watching something illegal, and he was totally on with that.
That's something else. It's like we were saying with the music, different personalities reaching towards. I think there's a mixture of that too. You don't have to be heavy metal and into the paranormal. I find a lot of police officers, a lot of EMTs, and I wonder if that is an adrenaline thing. I think a lot of this is. I mean, gosh, anything is sports. Mountain climbing.
I think mystery draws in lots of people. I mean, there are people who don't like mysteries, who want to feel like the world is secure and we understand everything, and they become debunkers. But I think most people like mysteries.
Yeah. Great way of putting
And
it.
Cisco and I have talked about that. It's where our big thing is looking for the next question. That there are no answers, and if you had the answers, it wouldn't be anywhere near as interesting. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like reading the last page to a great mystery novel. You just have to know at the end, instead of taking the journey and enjoying the journey, like we say here all the time. And it's okay if, as you're going along, that's one thing I found out listening to Seriah's show and listening to Red Pill Junkie and Adam, and everybody had a different vantage point. Okay, outside the box. You know, you have this comfy, cozy place where I'm just dealing with ghosts and what I perceive ghosts to be, and what I'm learning that I'm perceiving ghosts to be, and trying to, instead of taking the pieces and making them fit my puzzle, just understanding there's pieces, like you said, and we're not even really sure what those pieces are.
Yeah.
We think we do. We can see a kind of a fainted picture or the colors that might go over here, and then we go, wait a minute, there's more. And I think that that's one thing of when we are listening to podcasts that might, you know, we might disagree with the person. Like, for example, when I was learning about this very young, say early teens, cases like the Entity were happening. Amityville, of course.
Entity, that's one of the most frightening ones to me. And I've been by that house. It's out in, it's out near Los Angeles. I can't think of the little studio towns out there. I've driven by that actual house, and it gives off the vibe, even just driving by it. Burbank, I think, or not Burbank, well, it was Culver City. I think it's out in Culver City.
I'm not sure.
Made it a point to drive by there, but that was the one that really scared me a lot, because it attacked her in front of her children. There wasn't anything she could do about it. She'd have all these bruises and stuff on her.
Yeah,
and this was supposedly, and I think really one of the first entities where we're starting to reach out at that time, where we're dealing with Rosemary's Baby, where there's an underlying element, and although like 10, 20 years before that, we were definitely dealing with like the Crowhaven Farms and the ones where you think everything is hunky-dory in town, but everybody happens to be reincarnated, you know, witches that were burned in Salem or something and have a vendetta, and they're coming back for you. You know, there was a lot of those in the 70s. The House That Would Not Die with Barbara Stanwyck. If you have not seen this movie, people, go see it. It's got everything. But it's a great haunted house movie that chills you to the bone. But there's no blood splatter, and it's just all psychological and build up and historical questions like, is this possible? Is it possible for people to still be here and attached to this house and attached to people that are living there and have some control over, you know, that whole where the dead might be able to reach into the world of the living and somehow control it or manipulate it, was absolutely terrifying at that time. You know. And I think that Amityville took that to the next level. You know.
Excuse me.
Do you remember when you first heard about that case, and what was your thoughts on that? What were they then? What are they now?
I have no idea what they were then. Now I don't trust anything that the Warrens did.
We were talking about that last week. Although I love that photo of the little boy from.
This is what I've said.
Amityville. Even if it's not, if it's
I'm not saying there was
still scary as hell.
Yeah, I'm not saying there wasn't anything there. It's just because they were such charlatans and they exaggerated and lied about so much. Like it's hard to pull apart what was real and what was their invention.
Yeah.
But in a way, that's kind of the fun part of to try to dig through and figure out which is made up and which might really be something truly paranormal.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And it's not that like exactly. It doesn't mean that there isn't something there, and that's just the point of this. And I think, you know, Sandy said it best last weekend. We were talking about Amityville. We were talking about integrity. We were talking about people who have podcasts that almost act like investigative journalists, where they're triple checking sources, they're double checking information. They're not just throwing stuff out there. If they're doing a true crime or say like Steve and Bill's channel, the missing persons. They are agonizing over every detail and whether it's true or not. And people like that are just throwing stuff up and in bold red font, a true story. And the same with the Pet Rock, which is another reason I picked that out and put it in the gallery, because that right there is absolutely a physical just perfect example of advertising, marketing And they put a rock in a box with a little bit of hay. This guy sold 2 million.
I had one.
Christmas 1977, 2 million. I mean, he was a millionaire. He took his he took a few guys that gave him money to start it, starter money. Back then people borrowed money. They didn't go to, banks. They borrowed from friends and aunt whoever. And the people that did that Christmas, the week before Christmas, he takes those 3 people and himself down to the local Buick dealer, whatever, and they all picked out a LeSabre, and he pulls out cash and says, "You guys get lunch, I got these." True story. The inventor of Pet Rock did that for his investors, bought them all brand new cars.
First, I thought it meant that he bought the 3 cars for himself and bought them lunch. But
bought them lunch. Yeah, gave them all Pet Rock. But see, that's it. I think that Amityville was the Pet Rock of the 70s. And I was in it as a 12-year-old. I'm not saying nothing happened at the house or on the land. I'm talking about the book that Jay Anson wrote with the Lutzes. That part.
But to me, the amazing thing about it was how people wanted so bad to buy into it, how they wanted to believe it was real, wanted to believe it was a true story, and that there was no fiction involved or no embellishment or anything, which I did. I think Jay Anson took a lot of liberties with the story, but it made for an entertaining read and a scary movie. People love to be scared.
Yep, it's so true. What do you think, Seriah?
About which part?
All of it. I mean, I don't want to zero myself for me. I was trying not to zero so much on because the Warrens were involved, because it got to be so many things that were involved in the 70s. Then you go back and you look at The Conjuring, you listen to the people that were there and the ones that go and they tell the story still to this day. And then you do digging and you go, okay, there was a person that was named this, but she wasn't a witch and she wasn't burned to the thing. She was probably just a lady who did her, everything that gets exaggerated.
Yes.
So this gives every single real story, of course, that bad taste. Oh, well, you know what I mean?
It's any story that gets made into major things. I mean, there's plenty of good research out there. Like, I don't feel like it's worth the time to pull apart the stuff in Amityville because there's plenty of other weird cases that haven't had that fictionalization treatment or didn't need to be sold to a book publishing company or a movie publishing company. They're just actual cases. So I'd rather look at that stuff than the big ones. I mean, the woman who does a podcast that was in the family of the first Conjuring movie said that almost nothing in that movie was actually what happened.
Andrea Perron?
What?
For the Andrea Perron, The Conjuring? Is that who you mean?
I think so. So. Andrea sounds right.
Yeah.
And the second one was complete fiction because they weren't even involved in the Enfield haunting. And the Enfield's one of the good cases that was investigated well, and they just threw a bunch of nonsense out there on the screen.
So true. And that's the thing. The reason I find it fascinating is because I can almost, because of my life, I can almost use it as a timeline of where I was in the paranormal and where I was in my understanding. Because before I got the book, my mother had just died the year before. I was staying with my aunt and uncle. They didn't really know me. So for me to come forward and say, I want this book. Did you see the cover of the book? And now I'm with people, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I go to the mall, they're in the stacks, the mountains of books, because it's all being practically in the middle of the floor, and I'm like, I so want this book. And I remember asking for it and being scared. And I got it. And it blew my mind, and to the point I took the dust cover off and took care of it, and I wanted to savor every word of it. And nothing that I was reading at the time, I remember being, like I said, I had to be 11. And I'm reading it, and I'm understanding at least most of it, and I'm also at the point where I can't say none of that isn't possible.
Sure.
I mean, and I look back at that, and I go, that's pretty good at 11. Because I was only scared about the point of the reach. That was what was new to me. The reach, like saying it followed the priest. made the priest sick. The priest wanted to make a call, which is what Micah's comment was about. He says, I see the problem, they couldn't connect. One phone was a rotary, and the other one was a dialed. I just found that so funny. It was so dry and sarcastic. I loved it. But that got me. That part scared me, the reach. You know, the priest is supposedly driving home, and the hood flies up, and the blisters on his hands, and every time he thought about it or wanted to reach out. And that part, I think I put the book up for 3 days before I finished it past that. I remember having to digest that.
Yeah.
And then moving on. Isn't that something?
Yeah, the other one's like The Exorcist, even though that's loosely based on a true story. You know, that started like where in Egypt or Morocco or somewhere where they found the idol there, and that was what started the whole thing with The Exorcist.
Well, yeah, they did that in the following movies, I think.
And same with the little kid who was the Antichrist.
The Omen.
The Omen, yeah, the Omen movies.
Yeah.
Those are disturbing as hell, I thought.
That child, I'll tell you what. The time I saw what I call the grinners, where you see something that knows telepathically, you've seen it and you've pegged it, and it knows and it looks at you and it grins. That's what I mean. I don't know if you ever had something like that, Seriah, or even if it's just an energy. It doesn't have to be an entity or anything. It could be a person that picks up, feels your energy when you walk in your room, and pegs you.
No.
That's never
really.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's creepy when it's an entity too. It's happened probably 3 or 4 times in my life. That's why I always laugh with David Weatherly, because Steve makes a joke that he hates being called the black-eyed kid guy. But be like, sure you do, David. Do you know how much money that made David? I mean, at least they gave him a name.
He's written like a dozen books, but that's the one everybody remembers because it's
Yeah.
just become a part of the whole canon of
But that's
everything.
the kicker.
But he's like, I don't want to be known as the black-eyed kid guy. So I always go out of my way to refer to him as that.
Yeah, so many people. I mean, you've got architects that are known for their bathrooms, and they wanted to build a perfect house, But no, your bathrooms are terrific, That's funny.
I can say that David is probably part of the way that helped Where the Road Go get out there, because he was like my 3rd or 4th guest, and I'm thinking he's not going to come on. And he was more than happy to come on, and that show blew up.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay. People care about the black-eyed kids, apparently.
Yeah, the timing of it. I love his Grinning Man story. I'm sure you've heard it. I mean, that where he's trying to, I forget, I think he was in like a Jeep type vehicle, and I don't believe he was driving, and he was like, go back.
Yes, yeah.
It's like, go back. I mean, that's like incredible to me, but I can almost see it the way he describes it. Almost that silly putty kind of clay movement of that mouth, that grin. It's just, oh gosh, it just gets me. But when I saw that little kid, I put the longer version in the book, but it was basically, I felt something coming, something was off, and you couldn't throw it. And it was just throwing my energy off so much. I'm trying to peg where it's coming from. Turns out it's coming out of this little kid who's absolutely kicking the shit out of his mother. And every time she'd reach down to grab something under the cart, he'd kick her in the head. And I was like, and I'm like, there it is. And he just turned and looked at me and smiled. And he's dressed just like Damien in The Omen. I mean, or Angus Young from AC/DC. He's got this, it wasn't velvet, but it was that little suit-like type thing and the little penny loafers. And
little private school uniform type
creepy as
thing going
shit.
on there.
Yeah, it was creepy. It was
creepy. Speaking of movies like that, one of the more modern ones that does that 70s feel really well is The House of the Devil.
Now, I don't know if I've seen that. Which one? Who's in that?
I don't know.
Can you describe it a little bit? I was thinking there's the Prince of Darkness, which is just mesmerizing.
That's Carpenter. That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
that is mesmerizing. When you're I think one of the scariest scenes ever is just at that last scene where you see the silhouette standing in the doorway. I don't know. Carpenter had a way. That and The Thing.
The Thing was brilliant too. And that's a remake. That's one of the few remakes that blows away the original. But with Prince of Darkness, I mean, part of it too is they introduce this idea of time travel where they're getting messages in their dreams from the future.
Yes.
And like I
Yes.
loved that.
Yes, yes. And also the reaching, the ability to reach out and grab. That was, like I said, looking back, that was the thing that got me, because I'm like, okay, how do you prevent that? I was fine with things I could find a way, very much like a lot of people, I'm sure, because if you look back at the Universal monsters, they all had an Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Superman had kryptonite. The mummy had Tana leaves, apparently, and, fire, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always thought a lighter would take care of the mummy. Just
right,
torch
right,
him
or
up.
running.
Plus, he was slow. Yeah, just set him on
Yeah.
fire and run away.
Yeah, that was a good one. But, again, I felt bad for the mummy. I felt he was a reluctant monster. I really do. But everything had a cure. Silver bullet for the werewolf, the steak for the vampire, garlic, whatever. When I got to something that I couldn't figure out how it worked, how they had the power to do something like that, to reach out and say the scene where they've got the, I don't know what you want to call it, the tower of whatever in the cellar. It had all the power. First, I want to know who lit all the candles every day. Have you guys seen this movie? It's called The Prince of Darkness. It's an amazing, early 70s, you think, Soraya?
No, late 80s.
Late
Sometime
80s,
in the
okay.
80s.
It was, and it has Alice Cooper in it. He wrote a
Yes,
song
it
for it
does.
called Prince of Darkness that was
Yes.
on his Raise Your Fist and Yell album. And I think that was 87 or 88. So that's the same time for the movie. And they just re-released it on Blu-ray recently.
Who's seen this? Who's seen this movie, guys? It's Prince of Darkness. You've seen it too. Is it not creepy? But
It
that
is.
was
It's
the
very
thing. Like
creepy.
when the one girl went down, the chick with the glasses and the perm, and she goes down, and it just drips. Just that one drip, or affecting the radio, or affecting that was the stuff that got me. With Rosemary's Baby and Crowhaven Farms and things like that, the thing that got me is trusting someone who was going to betray you.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what that comes down to. These people are not who they say they are. So that taught me not to trust people. Wait a minute. You could turn it. You could turn into a Puritan, or a pilgrim any minute now. That freaked me out. The door, the whole thing with the torturing. Yeah, that was horrible. But that was something I knew from the witch trials. They did that to that man. I forget his name, but it was the betrayal. Not being able to trust someone, especially, she was close to everybody in that. That was Hope Lang, Steve. She was like one of the queens of the 70s miniseries, and things like that. Barbara Stanwyck, though, in The House That Wouldn't Die, there's nothing, that came out around the time of Last House on the Left, Little Girl Down the Lane. You had all these like kind of little titles, but this was way before Lifetime movies and all this. This was like Lifetime for horror movies. But you got lucky every once in a while, something good. Like I thought Rosemary's Baby was good, and I think at the same time, the things that were going on in real life are almost paralleling that in a way. I'm hearing anyway. I don't know if you've heard that.
So House of the Devil, the plot summary is in 1983, financially struggling college student Samantha Hughes takes a strange babysitting job that coincides with a full lunar eclipse. She slowly realizes that her clients harbor a terrifying secret, putting her life in mortal danger.
Wow. I don't know. I got to see it, and I'll tell you, after that little clip, I want to see The Haunting again, the original.
Yeah, me too. Very, very young Russ Tamblyn in there. I'd forgotten he was in that. At one time he was supposed to be Gilligan on Gilligan's Island.
No, I did not.
And then they replaced him with Bob Denver. And then years later, he went on to play Dr. Jacoby on Twin Peaks, the guy with the glasses that only had one lens. Yeah, that's the same Russ Tamblyn.
That was a freaky little miniseries. I think that was
only
70s,
from the mind of
it?
David Lynch. 80s, I think.
Was it
maybe
80s?
early 90s?
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was weird. I remember everybody was always talking about the log lady and the creepy
Bob, the creepy long-haired guy and then the other place that they went to with the curtains and the black and white
Dwarf.
folklore and stuff with the dwarf that talk backwards and things. It's the strangest thing that's ever been on network television, I believe.
Absolutely.
Really? I wonder if that gave flavor to X-Files. Do you think? You can look back and see things. Like last night we were talking about this. You'll appreciate this one. Needful Things. We were talking about Stephen King's Needful Things. And when I was reading Needful Things, I was getting the flavors of Something Wicked This Way Comes. And that whole premise from Ray Bradbury back and forth. And then I hear in an interview about a decade later, Stephen King saying, yeah, it was an homage to, and it's just sometimes it takes like 20 years to get validated on something like that. I was right. It had that flavor. And to me, Twilight Zone had the flavor of One Step Beyond. And then I find out that they were indeed connected via writers, directors, idea people, and stuff like that. And, this one, I don't know. I think I can see a lot of them spawning. There was one I was looking for when I was looking for telephone footage, because it's hard to find old telephone footage. Trust me. That came from an old Ma Bell advertisement way back in the day. But just looking through there, you find interesting things. And I came across a movie called I Saw What You Did. And the whole thing, it was like 58, I think. And young teenage girls, the telephone book, and they look in the telephone book, they pick a name, they dial the number, and they just get together and they say, I know who you are, I saw what you did.
Now, was that the original with Joan Crawford?
Yes.
I love that one. And they did a remake of that, but it paled in comparison, I thought.
I'm wondering if that was I Saw What You Did last summer. It just seems like a lot of these newer movies are getting their ideas off
they're taking
a lot of these older,
really two or three old movies in and kind of put it in the Cuisinart and then see what they can pour out of it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's dangerous to take chances on new ideas. It's better to go with old stuff is going to pull money in, even if it's not a ton of money, enough to justify doing it, and they'd rather take the safe route. That's why I like independent films, because independent films don't have that hanging over them.
They can do worry. They can do whatever they want to do and make the movie they want to make.
And I'm more forgiving of them. Like if you see a big blockbuster and there's huge plot holes and things don't match up, and it's just like, okay, there's no excuse for this.
Yeah, you look at that. They spent $300 million on this, and the continuity's off. The guy's wearing a different shirt. Something just simple like that.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, and you did a thing with Adam Zane, didn't you? Where you used to interview movies.
Oh yeah, well, not just Adam. I've done a few movie shows during Where'd the Road Go.
Okay, and now as far as that goes, what are some of your favorite independent films?
Oh God,
as it doesn't have to be in this genre, and why? Might want to reach out.
I like a lot. I like a lot of different Lovecraft adaptations. Dagon, I love. I love the newer Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, okay.
I loved Mandy with Nicolas Cage. That was a crazy movie.
Yeah.
Have
you guys seen
Prince
these?
of Darkness is one of my favorites.
Oh gosh, yeah. That one made me think. I wasn't quite understanding it the first time, and
right.
And when you first see it, you're not always able to rewind. Sometimes you're seeing it, you're there watching it when it's on, and that's it. I've got memories, guys, of, like Seriah said, I'm staying over somebody's house, he saw, wrestling, and you're hooked. Sometimes you just had to grab the movie Channel 11 was playing it, if you were lucky enough at 12 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. And I remember seeing the original of Oliver and being scared to death with a Fagin, and knowing, being an orphan, I knew I was so close to, all you got to do is breathe funny, your life can change. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that was also a reality of old London and the way it was. All those characters were always so interesting. You know, the old bar hags, and even Fagin himself with that nose and his hands, and you know the way he spoke to everybody and had everybody run in and you know being his little minions, little pickpockets and stuff. But that movie freaked me out. You know,
What one that got
Snow
me
White.
was 1978. It was a TV movie of all things, The Dark Secret of Harvest Home, which is based
Ooh.
on Tryon's novel Harvest Home, which is about woman goes up into New England, Connecticut, some little village where they practice the old ways, the folk ways. And it's kind of a folk horror type tale, you know, where there's something going
Is
on, you
Betty
know. Up there.
Davis in that?
Yes, indeed, she was.
That is one of the creepiest movies.
For a TV movie, that and Salem's Lot are my two favorite horror television movies ever.
I think
Wow.
the only movie that creeped me out as a kid was The Creeping Flesh.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
It was on like one of those they ran on like the horror TV afternoon thing, and it freaked me out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had a
Blob,
station there in Knoxville that they ran a thing called the Early Show, and it came on like at 4:00 in the afternoon. And they would have Horror Week, and they would show all these old black and white movies. And you know, you're sitting there in summertime in broad daylight, and you're scared out of your wits. And then it starts getting dark later. You're thinking about that movie that you watched, like, geez, I don't want to go out and play now.
Yeah. You got it, Micah. I know what you mean. Yeah, but you know, if you haven't seen Something Wicked This Way Comes, it's very well written. Bradbury has a way. You guys could probably better describe him than I could. There's a nostalgia and a depth to Bradbury, and there's I don't want to, you know, take the short road and say whimsical, but there's definitely a whimsy there. How would you describe Bradbury? And do you have a favorite story? Of like,
No.
I just recently saw. Is it called The Halloween Tree? I think it is. That's good.
I think that's him.
There was also a TV series called The Ray Bradbury Theater too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I have to look into that. Wow.
I don't remember when that was, but yeah, that existed.
I'm gonna have to write that one down too. I'm writing down all these good ones. The Ray Bradbury Theater. I have to look into that one. It's really funny how you miss a lot of these things growing up, whether it was TV. Now there's so much stuff going on. It's easy. There's so much. It's easy to miss everything. Very much like paranormal, you know, or Bigfoot evidence and all this other stuff. Now there's just so much. We're digging for it decades ago, begging for it. You know, this. My God, I think I looked at the picture of the brown lady for, 20 years before we got something else. Like the same ones over and over in the same books and now we're just inundated with stuff. And I think we've talked about that before, where it's like there's so much. You don't know what to believe, so you almost lean and start believing in nothing because everything is so easy to fake.
Well, that's true too. Also, someone, you posted it a second ago. Someone said the music industry and movie industries are, crap basically. And that's true.
Blue? Yeah, like no more talent. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to look to independent stuff if you're going to find talent.
Yeah. Seriah does that a lot with bands and, many things. That's what, the movies and books reviews and having the authors on and talking to them and bringing it out is an amazing thing. And getting a different perspective on it. I think that's why stuff like book clubs were so big.
Yeah.
If you're all reading the same book at the same time and then, chapter, however they do it, and then come and discuss that, it seems to me something like that would be very interesting. It depends on the book and the people.
Right.
And the people. But getting in a good group like that, but isn't kind of podcasting and doing stuff like this and having these live shows, it's almost similar because you pick a subject and you kind of bring it out. I'm seeing all kinds of movies in here. Yep. Micah said he saw Mandy.
That was the way it was back in the 80s, too, with the zine culture.
Yes.
All these people had these little niche things that they would make a little Xeroxed pamphlet about, and you'd reach out, and there was a a Central Clearinghouse Fact Sheet 5 by a guy named Mike Gunderloy, and you'd look through there at all these different zines, and he had them grouped by subject and things. And you could reach out, and then every month in the mail or every so often, a lot of them were just didn't have a set schedule. You could find people talking about things that you were interested in. And then the internet exploded. Now that's kind of what YouTube is. There's so much niche stuff on here that anything you're into, anything you want to learn about or find like-minded people, it's out there somewhere. There's a group, there's a Facebook page, there's a YouTube channel, and it's amazing. That in that sense, the world has gotten a lot smaller.
I actually got into radio by doing a zine.
Yeah.
I did a music zine for most of the 90s, actually. And at some point, I gave it to the woman who was running what's now the Last Exit for the Lost at WVBR. And she was leaving, and she's like, "Do you want my show?" And I was like, "Yes." "What?"
Excuse me?
Oh, wow. That's great.
So without that, Where Did the Road Go probably wouldn't have come about, because I didn't do Where Did the Road Go as a podcast. I was thinking radio show. I mean, it was 2013. Podcasting hadn't blown up like it did after that. So I was just thinking radio show. And that's probably what helped me get people like David Weatherly and stuff, is because I was on a commercial FM station.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to meet all these people and to talk to them, and you go through that whole host thing where you're excited to get somebody on, and then you get that person on where they just answer
Oh, I hate that the one word answers or the one word questions. I don't like those either.
I think the only person that did that to me was the first time I had Brian Forrester on.
Oh, wow.
And I was live, and he was doing, and I had a nice long list of things I wanted to talk to him about, and he was giving me quick answers, and I'm like, and I think he was just used to sometimes people being very hostile to him.
Oh.
And so I think once he realized I wasn't trying to, be hostile in any way, he opened up and started talking more. And I was like, okay, good, because we got an hour we got to fill here.
Yeah. That's the thing. You don't know. I always approached it where I'm not going to tell people I read the book if I didn't read the book.
Right.
I can't. There's some subjects I'm not going to understand skimming. I have to get into the person's mind. Where were they going with this? What were they doing? And I tend to get into deep subjects. Like I'll dive right into JFK. But I've been studying that my whole life. And it's, to me, I know it sounds crazy. I have a very odd way of looking at things. It's, I'm so digging what you said about not wanting to dig around for your reasons in the Amityville. But for me, it's unpacking something from the soundtrack of my life.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? I can remember poignant moments and where I was, what I was thinking, what I was understanding. I can see at the point where, hold on now, I was fighting for these people for 20 years, and I was figuring, unpacking the parts of, well, of course a family could move in after that and have no problems. I've seen that before, and whisking away at the solid things. I didn't care about whether the window blew out or it didn't blow out. I know it blew out in the movie, it didn't blow out in the book. People said it did. I didn't get into all that. I got into the stuff that was intriguing to me. Could these things happen? And like I said, at 11, I had no problem believing they, could happen. And under the right conditions. And I think too, it was, like I said, still in that same box of the overreach and the reach, was at the very end, it said it followed them to California. And that was like the final, shoot.
At the same time, if this energy is coming from one of the people involved, of course it's going to follow them, because that's where the source of the energy is. Whether or not there's something picking up on that energy and using it, or if they're manifesting it 100%, either way,
or both,
it can still follow them.
Absolutely. But see, my understanding at 11, I didn't have that.
Oh, sure.
Then I start learning, this is possible, which is why now I'm in this whole point of, if you go on a paranormal investigation and you have an EVP, how did you know it come from the house and not from somebody who came with you? And It's been like trying to get your attention all along. And again, that's when we start adding in, as soon as we think we have all the answers with the REM pods and this and everything else. Boom.
Yeah, sometimes it's the person that's the conduit. Look at our friend Michael Laciana. He gets some of the most amazing EVPs ever anywhere he goes. And I think it's him that
Yeah.
draws it. It's not.
very possible.
Yeah.
And it could be him unconsciously putting an impression on the tape, or it could be him almost channeling something in the area. That's the other thing. I mean, we don't know how this stuff works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ghost hunters a lot of times will say we're very scientific, but they don't understand the actual scientific method, which means you have to have like a control group and a non-control group. You got to be able to falsify it. Just saying, "Oh, we got an EVP." Well, that's great. That's interesting.
Yeah,
But it
has
does
to
nothing
be
toward proving what that
reproducible
is.
results. That's
Right.
how science works,
Yeah.
Right.
and that's not how the paranormal works.
No, and that's the thing. It can't be. You can't study UFOs in a scientific manner because you can't predict they're going to show up.
You can't reproduce it
Yeah.
on demand. And that's the whole thing with ghosts and everything else. But, again, I think it's important to people like Steve and I, and I don't, I'm speaking for you, Steve, but you're right here, so I think you'll agree with this. It's almost like people from our generation, the television shows almost marked time for us. And for me, it was the television shows and the books and my understanding, and that's why here recently I'm going back over the Amityville and going back over all of this different stuff, just for not to prove or disprove anything, but to understand it. What did I have right then? What am I understanding more now? Because it really is one of those things when you start getting in human character. The lawyer Weber, who lied about this, had 3 bottles of wine with the Lutz and came up with the neighborhood cat was really Jody the pig. Well, does that... Yeah, but you see people look at something like that and go, "Oh gosh, I knew that wasn't real. I knew that couldn't happen."
Yeah.
Hold on. Yes,
And
it
then
can.
sometimes you get vindication too. Like I've had an idea or a pet theory that I've never mentioned, and then maybe years later you hear somebody positing that theory, like, "That's what I thought, 20 years ago." And it's just,
Yes.
it's amazing, to know that you
It is
connected
so-
somewhere with somebody like that unknowingly and unbeknownst to either one of you.
It's so interesting because that's it. It's like, for me, it's like unpacking, and it's like unpacking a suitcase that's got too much stuff in it, won't close right. It's way too heavy. So I'm going to go through and I'm pulling out all the stuff I'm never going to wear. Never, don't even know why I bought this, because what the hell was I thinking that day? And take all this shit out of this suitcase, and then I wind up with this nicely neat, maybe not, all suited together, but at least I know what I've got in the suitcase, and I'm at a level of understanding with everything okay here, because I feel like the consciousness is changing and more stuff is coming. You know what I mean? So I want to take out the junk, and to me that case infuriates me because first of all, to me it's the crime that was exploited. That's the crime that happened.
Yeah.
And then, but you look back, we've looked back on over multiple stories, all of us, everybody here has looked back into, you say, the Mickey Gilley case, where it was Pearl who was beheaded, and supposedly the whole story of her head being thrown down the well, everybody's heard it. And she was actually found in the ditch, headless, and it was 20 minutes before people were selling leaves with blood on it. This is it was early 1880s.
Yeah,
People haven't changed.
People.
I think you meant
People
Bobby
haven't
Mackey
changed.
and not Mickey
Thank
Gilley.
you. What I said Mickey Gilley. I'm sorry.
Mickey Gilley.
It was a cowboy. There was a bull in the barn. There was a
Yeah,
bull on
same.
the dance floor.
Different location, same thing.
But that's it, Zoriah. People are people.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. I think we like to look back nostalgia-wise and think everything was cool back then. People didn't do these things. And, are you kidding me? We can all got stories.
I think we're more conscious of the fact that type of behavior is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the interconnectedness of everything, the people who are aware that stuff is not okay can say something.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
But it goes way back. Of course, it's a different circumstance, but like when Lincoln was shot, people were running up and dipping their handkerchiefs in his blood to save it as a memento. People have always had a ghoulish tendency, I think, with stuff like that. Same with Ed Gein. People were taking parts of the house and taking things out of his yard and stuff before it mysteriously burned down. That was because the neighbors didn't want it to become some kind of macabre museum, which is understandable.
Mm. And you know that at this point in time, everybody knows what's happened at Amityville and what happened. They changed the address from 112 Ocean Avenue to 108, and they've changed it again. They've changed the windows, the iconic windows, and people still. Not October, not Halloween. There's still always people there. Cars stopping every 10, 15 minutes to stop and take a picture. Or and now with the podcast, trying to run up and get
Look
pictures
at the
of
window.
house. And taking bricks from the foundation and siding off the house, and nothing has changed. And I find that amazing. With all this information, you'd think that we'd be at a level now. We'd be at a level where UFO people and Bigfoot people could sit in the same room and not throw chairs at each other, and people say there must be something, like we shouldn't have to have a Bigfoot in a cage to say that something like this is a possibility of existing. That bothers me, and I don't know why, because I think we should be further, looking back over the years.
Well, the thing I always say with all this paranormal stuff is that people who say this stuff doesn't exist are not looking at history. All of this stuff, ghosts, UFOs, monsters, it goes back through our entire history, across every culture. So whatever is happening is a human experience, and it may not happen to everyone. It may be a more rare experience, but it is a very real experience, because otherwise it would not track all the way back through history. It would not track cross cultures. It's just that it was named different things by different cultures in different time periods because they had no idea what it was. So it became what they were, something they could look at it and be familiar with.
Right. And of course, people are going to be very afraid of things they don't understand and things they fear. That goes way back.
Well, and that comes down to how you perceive things. I mean, our brains filter out a lot of stuff. I mean, you're seeing a very small percentage of what your brain is actually perceiving from your senses. And it decides what's important. And it will give you that information. So if you come across something you've never come across before, something completely novel, to me, there's no surprise that someone's walking through the woods, they come across something their brain has no context for. And it goes, I don't know, it's scary because I have no context for it. It must be a monster. Monsters are scary. There's your monster. And it's not that it was actually something evil or horrible. It's that our brain just didn't know what to do with it, and it got scared, and it thinks, well, what's scary? Monsters are scary. So it slaps a monster form onto this thing.
Well, it's like I've got a story of the Strange Things in the Woods where a guy thought he saw a light in a coffin in the woods, and it scared the crap out of him. He was about to die of fright, and his mother was very superstitious, saying, oh, it's a warning, it's a portent, it's an omen. And his dad's like, I've had enough of this nonsense. We're going to go find this. So hesitantly, he goes with his dad. They go out in the woods, and it's a rotted log where a tree's fallen down. There's a spider web with a lightning bug caught in it. But when the guy's walking through there in the dark, he sees it, and his mind says, it's a coffin with a light in it. When it wasn't, that was all. But he said, the first time I saw it, it was a coffin with a light in it. It wasn't a lightning bug caught in a spider web in a hollow log. So, perception is everything. And again, what you project on, sometimes you see what you want to see. I've scared myself with literally my own shadow before. I've seen my shadow move in the driveway once. My neighbor had cut a tree and I didn't know it. And walking across the driveway, I'm like, oh, it's a shadow person. But with the tree gone, the street light was shining in a different area.
You were the shadow person.
Yeah, I was the shadow person. I've had other stuff like that. I've woken up before and looked across the room at a pile of laundry sitting in a chair.
Yes.
Like, what's sitting in that chair?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I put my laundry over there earlier.
That's the most common one. And that's always the running meme joke of, oh, during the day, it's a pile of dirty laundry you don't want to deal with. But at night, it's a strange visitor sitting in your chair.
When that pile of laundry gets up and starts running around the room, then you got something to worry about. But
right.
as long as it stays still. But I've even seen things that were still appear to move in the darkness too, or in very low light conditions. You stare at something long enough, you'll get that little quiver in your vision sometimes.
And that's the thing. Our perceptions are so not what's actually there. It's a mix of how you interpret it, what you've experienced before, what information your brain thinks is important, And so it's all a mix. It's an illusion of us thinking that we're seeing what's actually there, and we're not.
And that's where you get pareidolia and samacura and some of the different things like that, where you hear things or see things, like looking at the clouds and seeing a bunny rabbit. Somebody else might see a skull, or some other people just see a cloud.
Or Jesus in a piece of toast.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing. But same thing. It's funny. I've just recently, if you like pop culture and you like music and different things like this and history, there's a man called Mark Grobert, and he is absolutely like the Forrest Gump of pop culture, because he was the editor of National Lampoon.
Okay.
He started the MTV To Go magazine. While he was working for Lampoon, they came and got him. He's been involved in the music scene in Hollywood, written scripts, good friends with Oliver Stone, very into the JFK, and people like Abby Hoffman. And I am listening to these pop culture stories that happened while I was growing up. So, I got involved with, because he was talking about Laura Canyon and all these different things, and then JFK, and I was hooked. But the Abby Hoffman story, where Abby Hoffman, are you familiar? Everybody knows the name, but very rarely people remember. He was just an activist. He was a young activist, very much like almost like a comedian, but he was more of a satirist. But he had
so
the
yippies that came up against the hippies. That was kind of a different thing. But a lot of it, it was just poking fun at people and making fun of them to themselves, and they didn't get it and went along with him.
Right.
He was kind of a satirist, a political satirist more than anything.
He had this way of, getting whole groups to do things, very much like, but it was all in protest. It was during the Bob Dylan times, and all of this was going on.
He published a book called Steal This Book, and people did. People would steal it out of the bookstores.
It was full of stuff on how to get things free in the United States. And some of them still work to this day, like little things like, okay, here's one that's in the book. You can mail a letter without a stamp if you go ahead and put your address that in the send address, and put where you want it to go in the return.
Right.
And it still worked. So this Abby Hoffman put this whole book, and steal this book, and people would steal it. But he actually, this guy was brilliant. He actually got a meeting with the generals at the Pentagon. Are you guys aware of this?
No.
And they sat down with him because he wanted to do a protest. He had people out there. He had Hare Krishnas. He had people out there with the finger symbols and drum circles and stuff. Just peaceful stuff. People throwing energy out there. And they come out, what are you doing? He's measuring. I said, what do you mean you're measuring? And he says, I need to know how many people I have to put across here. And I figured, times 8, and he's just playing this whole thing off. This Abby actually wanted to levitate the Pentagon 23 feet.
Yeah.
And once it got to 23 feet, the energy would shake the demons out of the Pentagon. And the reason he picked 23 feet, went in totally straight face, did news, press conferences and everything on this. The reason for 23 feet, because that was the highest ladder, because that's the how high the cherry picker on the fire trucks would go. Because when the generals wanted to run out of the Pentagon, they were going to need a ladder. He is talking, he's got all the microphones, the old, like 1960s, everybody's got the long microphones in his face.
Yeah.
They sat with him, and he says he actually had a meeting with the generals at the Pentagon. I'm not making this up. You can't make this up. And he said 23 feet. They said, no, we'll give you 3. And they shook on it.
Mm-hmm.
It actually happened. Look it up. It's a fantastic story. Abby Hoffman.
He was always doing something like that. He and Grace Slick tried to get into Nixon's daughter's wedding because Grace Slick was an alumni of Finch, where his daughter had gone. And Abby Hoffman wanted to get in and slip LSD into the tea that they were having at this tea, but they turned him away. Not before he hung a black flag with a marijuana leaf on it on the front gate of the White House.
Grace Slick had the acid on her at the time, and
They
they
were
just
gonna
kept
do it.
getting thwarted. And of course, they would have done it. But the fact that they met and they said no and agreed to 3 feet. So what they did was the generals of the Pentagon actually agreed with Abby Hoffman that he could levitate the Pentagon, but only to 3 feet and be done with it. And of course, that they all got out there and people got arrested and everything else. He was always trying to get arrested. But stories like that, I mean, we're missing so much, and there's so much in.
You gotta love the guy. And you don't have people that protest like that anymore. I mean, look at Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters and some of the stuff they would travel around to. He had the magic bus or whatever it was, and it was.
Oh gosh, I barely remember that.
Electric Kool-Aid acid test. Read that by
Okay.
was it Tom Wolfe? I think the guy that wrote about all that, wore a white suit. There's a lot of guys back then that they got it when other people didn't, and everybody was a lot more people then. I think were so square and straight laced that they didn't even realize they were being pranked. They thought all this was serious. Why, he's a hippie. We have to put him to death. He's a witch. Stone him.
But it is amazing what people can do, and I think a lot of people are kind of doing that with podcasts and shows, and I mean even gamer channels. I mean, gosh, there's talent there. There's people would think that go to a place like D Live that there's anything going on. There's just somebody playing, but there is something going on. There's a live chat. There's people involved. They're looking. They're learning. They're throwing in their insight and their information. So it's all of these little information people pods everywhere now, whereas before, when Steve and I went to school, one movie Rocky came out, everybody was talking about Rocky for 6 months. But it's a difference.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, when we were kids, there was only 3 networks, 4 if you counted PBS. So anytime there was something on, some big event on TV, the next day everybody was talking about it. In every grade, the whole school, even the teachers would be discussing it. And now, there's so much out there. Not only the junk that's on television and on cable TV, but on all the internet channels and stuff, the platforms on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. There's too much for any one person to absorb and talk about. So that's why it's narrow casting. You got to find your niche, and then those people will want to talk with you about it, and everybody else is either wonders what you're talking about or they have no interest in it.
The problem with podcasting, I think, right now is that the major companies, corporations, have learned that podcasting is a thing, and they can make money at it. Mm-hmm. And of course, what that does is it pushes down all the independent podcasts, because now every famous actor and wrestler and musician, they all have their own podcast.
Yep.
And of course, that's what gets pushed to the top of the charts because they're already famous. They have that going for them. I mean, that's fair. But, they have the corporate push. They have all the money, and that's what people see. So they're not necessarily, and some of them are good. It's not that they're by default bad. It's that it's not a level playing field anymore. For a long time, podcasting was at least sort of a level playing field. Like there weren't a billion podcasts, and there weren't this interest in these big corporate entities in it.
And that's kind of what killed zines too, because back then, anybody with a printer or even handwritten stuff out and access to a Xerox machine, you could put out a magazine. And then, like you said, the corporations got involved and zines became a thing. Then the internet came along and finished killing it off. Then, everybody could have a web page, and now everybody can have a podcast or a YouTube channel, and you're seeing the corporate influence in that. There's corporate sponsored YouTube channels that appear to be just your average Joe and Jane blow, but there's money behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
And a certain agenda, certain something there's certain spin they're trying to push, or something they're wanting to see through. So it's the original in the organic fashions is the best with zines or podcasts or YouTube stuff or whatever, and then the waters get muddied.
And music, I mean, the minute something sort of breaks, they sign every
I'll be right back,
band.
guys. Keep going.
Right.
Okay. They sign every band that sounds just like that big thing,
Like with grunge. Just last week I was up in Aberdeen, and I went down to the Kurt Cobain Memorial Park, which is on the banks of the Wishkah River there, under the bridge where he sat as a kid and hating his life and wanting to get the hell out of Aberdeen. And that's the way grunge was. When that broke, so that was kind of just a dull time in music. Everything was corporate and fairly shitty that people were listening to. And then all of a sudden, here's something that just destroyed everything and turned everything upside down and got rid of the hair bands and the corporate rock and things. But that's what they did. They went and signed every band that could possibly fit within that mold and just kind of ruined that too.
And I think that started with the hair bands because, bands like Motley Crue made it big, Poison made it big, and then suddenly they were signing every band that had you just looked. It didn't
Every
even
band
matter
that
if they
had
had the
long
sound.
hair and spandex, or I'm
Yeah.
silent.
And so you had this plethora of just crap. I mean, some of them were very good bands, but most of them were just generic. They all sounded the same. And then grunge came along.
Very
They did the same.
bandwagon-esque, and then
Even in the underground stuff. I mean, in the early '90s, like when black metal started to kind of be an underground thing, suddenly they're like, "We got to sign every black metal band." It's like, no, you don't. No, stop.
Stop that. Get away.
Death metal, same thing. I mean, every subgenre comes along, it just gets flooded because it's like, oh, that band's popular.
That's why I like to get on Bandcamp and somewhere like that and just tear through the independent stuff to people that may never be signed or may not be heard of outside their own little fan base. There's some amazing stuff out there, and it's one of those things you kind of want to keep it to yourself. You don't want it to become popular and everybody ruin it for you. It's like, no, this is my band. You can't listen to them. I don't want them to be popular. I don't want them to sell out. But by the same turn, you want the best for them. You want them to be able to make a living. And doing what they do, but
even if it means you can't deal with listening to them anymore because you hear them too much.
Yeah, money changes everything.
Yeah, well,
it happened to me with Meatloaf. I'm telling you, it was an underground college thing, and it was so cool, guys. I'll tell this real quick, and I'll shut up. On the bus coming back from the football game, I was color guard. So we're all on the buses with the football team, the band, and everything. And some kid about 6 seats back starts singing the chorus to Paradise by the Dashboard Light. And I join in and start singing. Then somebody over about 3 other seats this way starts, joining in. It was one of those moments like it was in a movie or something. And just everybody just had been underground listening to this. Nobody else had heard of Meatloaf. And of course that was the one that they brought out and put forth quick, but we were listening to what we used to call the deep cuts, the album cuts. But Jim Steinman was a crazy piano player.
It's like the first time I ever saw REM was at a little tiny bar on campus that had let bands come and play on the weekends. Tiny little stage in the corner. Never forget, it was spring break, so everybody was gone. And there's like maybe 6 people in there. And here's REM playing stuff off their first album. Now, I'd heard part of it because I was involved with the campus entertainment board and the alternative station on campus. So we would play a lot of stuff that nobody had ever heard. Same with U2. And the next time I saw REM, they were at the alumni gym in front of maybe 2,000 people. And then the next time they played at Stokely Athletic Center in front of like 12,000 people.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget seeing them that time with 6 people. And they absolutely played their guts out. They put on a much better show than they did when I saw them in the bigger arenas because they'd driven up from Athens, Georgia, and just, nothing to lose, no for broke, and they played for 6 like it was 600,000,
I saw Dream Theater on the Images and Words tour when they first started it, and I think maybe there were 30 people at the club in Ithaca, and now they're selling out arenas. And I mean, I don't think they've gotten bad or anything, but I'm very picky about what Dream Theater I like. Typo Negative, same thing. Sure. Typo Negative played in Ithaca, maybe 10 people showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a cool show. And, then like maybe half a year later, they're playing big clubs and you can barely move.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, they're like playing huge arenas and doing these huge tours. And it's like, well, that was quick.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm kind of like, and now I'm getting tired of hearing about you constantly.
Same with U2. Like I said, we played them on the college station, but I saw them on the second night of their first American tour. They opened for the Jay Giles Band, who we'd booked into the alumni gym, college campus entertainment board. And U2 were out there, and they just absolutely killed everybody. I'm standing backstage talking to Peter Wolf. He's deceased now, but he was the singer for Jay Giles Band. He's like, man, would you listen to that? He's like, I don't even want to go out on stage. I'm like, dude, you got the #1 album in the country right now. That was when Centerfold was popular.
Oh, yeah.
And they went out, and I think it gave them the energy to put on a better show than they normally would have. But U2 was one of those bands, you saw them live, and they were like, 16, 17, 18 years old at the time. You knew they were going to be huge. Bono's up like walking around in the light rigging and stuff, and that's still Adam Clayton's bass was the loudest bass I've ever heard. It made my chest hurt. But memories.
Peace frame. Yep. Absolutely.
I was just going to say something. What the hell was it?
You're talking about Bono?
No, I don't know. I don't know anything about you two. I don't really listen to any of them.
Their old stuff was good.
Oh, I know what it was. So I always like stuff that sounds different, especially heavy stuff that sounds different. And I mean, metal is very innovative. It's probably the most innovative music form out there. Once you get past like the early '90s, it just like everything gets incorporated and it just starts, spider webbing out into all these different styles.
Yeah.
And the first time I got a demo from System of a Down, I was like, this is really cool. Nobody's going to like it. And then like the first album came out and they got, a little bit of radio play. And I'm like, yeah, they're never going to be big. And then the second one came out. When that second record came out, I loved it to death. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And then it got huge. It just blew up. And I'm like, and now I hate it because all I hear is System of a Down.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about metal, it's splintered into so many different genres. I mean, there's original heavy metal type bands. Then you've got the speed metal, you've got the black metal, you've got the death metal, you've got the melodic death metal. Then you've got the
atmospheric black
doom
metal
and the sludge and all that. And it's just, if you like metal, there's a dozen different ways you can go and not be disappointed.
And it's incorporated every other music form that's ever existed. I think there's a metal band pretty much from every country on the planet. And all of them are bringing in their own influences. So yeah, it's crazy.
And some of the ones that really get me are some of the ones from South America. And apparently metal is bigger there than anywhere else in the world. And it always has been and still is. And there's some friggin' amazing bands in Brazil and Chile and Argentina.
Donnie
and places
sent me
like
one
that.
not long ago. It was one of the what was that one, Donnie? They were the throat singers. Is that what it was? Was it Mongolian?
There's Mongolian metal.
Yeah, it was. It was a trip. They were all women. They were all young girls.
Okay.
It was an amazing sound. It really was. It was filmed in this desert, and you just imagine. But it was really good. You remember that one, Donnie? You sent me. I can't remember the name of that band, but it was so neat. I remember showing everybody. But that's just it. Music is music, and I think it's universal. We said that in the beginning. I mean, even tribal. Just drums.
Our brains are hardwired for music. So there's something. There's a reason for that,
I love the blending of genres. I'm still waiting for like Appalachian death bluegrass or something, and it probably exists.
It exists. It absolutely.
Because if you look at a lot of those bluegrass songs, the murder ballads and stuff, that's perfect for metal. I mean, it fits in a strange way.
Yeah. And some of them you've seen. I love seeing some of these, and and the internet has made so many stars, and the YouTube and the TikToks and all of this stuff, and that one where people get together and sing. The amazing voices that I'm hearing on these things blow anything I'm hearing on mainstream away. Without all this extra, auto tune and everything else. It's really cool for that purpose.
Sometime in the last few years, I think it was Spotify that came out and said that metal's actually the most popular thing on their service. And I said, well, that makes sense because metal's broken into so many genres. Okay. And the people who were listening to metal back when it started are probably still listening to metal. Mm-hmm. They're just using Spotify to do it now. Yeah. So that's a very wide range of stuff for a lot of different people, from young kids to elderly people to be listening to. So it doesn't surprise me at all that it's the most listened to form of music on their service, over beating out stuff like pop music, because pop music is oriented toward generally a young group. And there's what I found that over the years with metal is that there's so many young kids who are now doing like thrash stuff that sounds like it came out in the 80s. And their parents were into that. And I'm always amused by that. It's like, you're supposed to hate your parents' music. What's going on here?
What happened?
Instead, they're jealous of their parents.
I lived through that thing. I remember riding in my mother's 68, 67 Thunderbird convertible. Beautiful car. Cream. Beautiful car. And they'd play a Frank Sinatra song. And then they played something like Carpenters or Tony Orlando and Dawn, or one of these other bands. Like you might get lucky, and in there you might have heard like an Animals or something. There was still that push that these kids today with their hair and their music. You know, it was still on the same. I can remember we're driving around in New Jersey, so we're getting WOR out of New York, WNEW, which was mostly rock, and at night you might get like more of the deeper cuts, like we said on the album. So you'd hear like the whole Led Zeppelin, song instead of the pieces that they would play on the daytime stuff. It was, what a difference, what a change, And my mom could remember sitting around the radio listening to the original broadcast of War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what music it is. If it resonates with you, it can affect you on multiple levels.
Indeed.
It's just a matter of finding what resonates with you. And sometimes that's a matter of exposure. I know people who are like, music's fine, whatever's on. But then they hear that one band that really resonates with them. And they're like, oh, my God, what is this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's so true. I mean, it just happened to me the other day, and I think it was an old Loggins of Messina. It wasn't anything anybody's ever heard of because it was a deep album cut, but it was one that I loved in high school. And I think I put on iHeartRadio and put one of those mix things on, so I'm getting like old Neil Young and stuff like that, and it was Crosby, Stills, Nash. I'm out in the garden. Perfect. That's your happy place. And that one song kicked in, and you're just floating. You could be 18.
That's one that gets me, is a band I may have liked and listened to,
yeah.
And then there's a song or two that I somehow missed, and you hear it years later, like, who is this? And you look, it's like, oh my God, I had this album, but I never listened to the whole thing, type of thing. But sometimes you just play the songs that you like and then throw it to the side and get something else and put on. But I've had that happen.
That's funny. I just thought of something that was huge back in the day. And when we got 45s, because you couldn't afford, this was the poor man's album, because you couldn't afford the whole album.
Yes,
you just got the 45, which had one song, and you had to have the special little plastic divot that you had to put in the center so it would fit on the record player. And there was the big thing back then. There was the side A, and there was the side B. And that was like a major thing in the production company. It's like what to put on the side B. And I can't tell you the amount of hits that turned out to be the side B song.
The B side, the disc jockey's like, I'm tired of listening to this. What's on the other side?
Yep.
And they'd flip it over and play it, and then people go nuts over it.
And to get past all that red tape and everything else, the solicitation of it and them paying for records to be ahead. I mean, the days of, people like Wolfman Jack do, DJ and so many kids calling in and dedicating songs and making the song by popular demand popular. Yeah. Instead of money making the song popular or the star popular. Mm-hmm. That's the stuff that's changed so much, so much. I mean, do you think Dylan would have had a shot? He would have had more of a shot now on YouTube or TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
And finding that niche, you know what I'm saying? Than he would in a company, I think. Because of his personality and everything else, he was going to be who he was going to be. He wasn't going to.
But he came along and just shook things up. There wasn't anything like that. And then when he went electric, he pissed a lot of people off. But then he basically redefined the music for that generation.
Yeah, he literally said, "Where's all my fans? Where's all my people?" When he played that electric, they thought he sold out, and that was it. They turned against him.
And I wonder if he was like that at home. Was he sitting at the table? Would you pass the peas, please? And like, what the hell's wrong with you?
No, but I got I got a little story for you. We hear a lot of stuff because there's a lot of police in the family and connections and stuff like that. So you get to hear some things through the grapevine. So here, not far from us, if you've heard of Asbury Park, you've got Long Branch, and that's another, beachside city that's, pretty famous, Red Bank and stuff like that. So as you get further away, right on the beach, generally, there's the mansions, the big $1 million homes with all the glass and everything else. You move back away from it. The further away you get, the smaller the houses, and then it starts again. Because now you're on the outside suburbs. So in one of these kind of offshore suburbs of Long Branch, where they were just building homes, but they had other homes from Sandy getting rebuilt. And the police officer's doing the patrol, and he sees this guy, and he's leaning in. He's all raggedy. He's got an old raggedy coat, big floppy hat on, and he's looking in all these windows. So this guy thinks, I've got a squatter looking for a way into one of these houses that are either being just built or remodeled, right? So they pull he pulls over, does the whole flashlight thing. It's raining. You know, the guy's got rain dripping off his hat and everything else. And he says, sir, you can't be here. You're going to have to leave, or I'm going to have to arrest you for vagrancy or trespassing, whatever it was he said. And he says, you can't do that. I'm Bob Dylan. And he goes, he shines a flashlight in his face. He goes, yeah, sure. Whatever he said. I'm Hank Williams Jr. or whatever. It's like, get in a car. So he's arguing with him back and forth. It's raining. The cop's losing patience. The guy, he figures the guy's just lying to him. He looks like a bum. He's all wet and like a drowned rat, he said he looked. Puts him in the car. He puts him in the cuffs, throws him in the car, gets him down to the station. He drags this poor schmuck in to the cop shop, right? And the sergeant looks up at him and goes, what the hell are you doing? And he says, what do you mean? He goes, this guy's, he tells him everything he was doing. He says he was going to break into the houses, blah, blah. He goes, it's free of Bob Dylan. You ever seen Bob? He looks like Bob Dylan now looks like a drowned rat on a good day.
He's always had that.
On a good day.
They're talking in the chat there about his alleged deal with the devil, but he did admit that. It was in an interview on, I think it's 60 Minutes with Ed Bradley. He talks about
he did that
deal
whole
with the devil,
JFK
keeping up my end of the bargain. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't doubt that, because I don't understand his popularity. There's a lot of people here saying they don't like him.
Like the Crossroads.
I don't like him.
I don't like him. Very unpopular opinion. I don't like the Beatles. I never have liked the Beatles.
I also don't like the Beatles.
Oh my God.
No. Yeah.
However, I love it when metal bands do Beatles covers. So I think I like the songs. I just don't like their sound.
Covers, and I like to hear some of Paul McCartney's avant-garde stuff, like the Fireman and some of the solo stuff that he did. Unusual stuff, but I've never been a big Beatles fan. To me, they were the first boy band. I know Ann Palmer's probably having a apoplectic fit right now, but that's just me. Don't care.
We look at the Beatles all different in this family, and I make Bowden crazy by thinking I swear Paul probably is dead.
Yeah, that's Paul, the fake
rumors.
Paul.
Yeah.
Your earlobes don't attach and detach. I'm sorry, that's impossible.
And Billy Shears, yeah. Another one of those digs into the Laurel Canyon myths and the LSD and Timothy Leary and the
other
CIA
popular opinion on this channel is...
we've probably gone... I guarantee you we went... All we have to do is just say hello to the chat and we go yellow.
And I think we can agree, F Yoko Ono. Everybody seems
absolutely.
There for a while, everybody we mentioned would die.
We killed Meatloaf.
We killed Meatloaf. We caused the Titanic exhibit to collapse on some people. There was a couple other people that we wiped out. But we've mentioned Yoko and Justin Bieber a dozen times, and they're impervious to our powers, Cisco.
Absolutely. We have to be very, very careful. Yep. A lot of people, I think music sometimes is like art too. And I'll say this and then I'll get us out of here, because we've done absolute 2 hours. I don't know where the time went. It's been a lovely conversation.
I didn't even have to go take a bathroom break tonight.
You haven't. Look at you. Mulder needs a cigarette.
Mulder passed out over here. He's had a calming chew because of the fireworks.
Well, the thing I was going to say is I think with music, it's definitely just like everything else. Hollywood, you can go back as far, just like Seriah was saying, people have always been human. They were selling bloody leaves back then. They tore the curtains basically apart in the Ford's Theater with Lincoln's blood on it. It just disintegrated a curtain. I mean, I just don't understand, how we've always been like that, and I don't know why it shocks people when we look back and see, the Vasilla Axe murder or some of the serial killers back in the day, even Jack the Ripper, or keep going back. I mean, there's been ancient writings on murder. I mean, God, look at, the Ides of March and Caesar. And, Caesar's whole situation wasn't much different than Lincoln's or Kennedy's or any of these, and we're still so shocked and say, conspiracy theorists. Conspiracy has been around forever. I think it would be more unusual to not find, some kind of shenanigans going on, depending on what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with money and you're dealing with power and you're dealing where people can push up and move back, and I think you're always going to have it. So the
Well-
best thing to do, and the music is an escape, I think, from that. And like you said, Seriah, it hits you on many levels. Yeah.
And the thing about conspiracies do happen. It's just that not everything is a conspiracy.
Yeah,
True.
agreed.
And the successful conspiracies are the ones with the least number of people involved. If you're going to have a successful conspiracy, it's not going to be something like the Earth is flat. It's going to be something where you only need a few people in key places to keep quiet, because someone will talk if you have too many people involved.
Right.
Also, someone earlier in the chat had said they always only get negative premonitions. And one of the things we know from psi research, it was much earlier.
Okay.
One of the things we know from psi research is that emotional stuff is the stuff we pick up on. So the stuff that goes backwards in time is the really emotional stuff. So negative stuff can often be very, emotional. And that's probably why she's getting mostly negative premonitions, because that's the stuff that's impacting her the most. It's not because there's some negativity with her. It's that when these things happen to her, it sends that information back because it's very emotional to her. It's hitting her just right, and she's able to pick up on it. Someone else said something about someone who gave off some or had a lot of bad energy due to trauma. That is totally a thing. And people who have trauma, especially, like that's one of the key things Dr. Ring found when he was looking at experiencers, is that trauma is a very common factor in paranormal experiences. And those people usually have psi experiences. And if they have a negative outlook on things, they're very potentially going to be a magnet for negativity.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that whole thing where we're saying carrying it with you. And, depending on the words you use, and again, that's probably why lyrics are so popular and reach out and touch certain people with just a few words. It could be one line in a chorus that gets you, and it's the same thing with this, talking about carrying stuff with you. Does that mean you have a constant attachment? No. You can, and I believe at this point in my life that it can actually be like a bloodline thing where something follows a whole family. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be bad,
Well, also, it may follow the family because that family has particular energy that appeals to it.
That's another absolute. Yep. Because again, that's how ghosts are attached to certain, attracted to certain people too. Which is why, like, you can have people live in a house and their energy is setting everything off. Everything's playing off of each other. Then they leave, and it can either go with them, or it can just go dormant again, or leave and go somewhere else. There's no set rule. There are somewhere there's set rules of how things can work, energy wise. But man, it's as individual as the individual experiencing it. And if it's an individual that's the energy, again, it's every case is different with a couple of different similarities. And I think that's it. We're really, really focusing on the similarities and to try to get some answer, some comfort, some idea.
Yeah, we're also making a lot of assumptions.
Yep.
Because we don't know what this stuff is. We don't know what we're interacting with. We don't know how much of it's us, how much of it's something else. And at this point, we still don't have a really reliable way to figure that out. So
that's
throwing out different ideas, looking at it from as many different perspectives and avoiding making assumptions is the thing that I like to do. But it's hard because you're always going to get stuck down some path. At some point, you'll suddenly have to realize, oh, I've kind of excluded this, and maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah. And I think it's really healthy if we go back real quick to the pictures and the amount of information and so-called evidence and information that's out there now. Don't not look at it because you can't tell what's real and what isn't. Maybe if we look at things because we enjoy looking at them and looking into them and imagining and saying, what if, and what if this, and maybe that loosens you up a little bit to where you do see things differently and from a broader picture. That may be the case. We could try it, because I have had people that were so frustrated by the amount of, say, ghost pictures or I mean, I see this stuff all the time, so I'm always looking for stuff for the show, and you see people talk, well, it could have had a string tied to it. Well, it could have had another person in there. Yeah, all of that's possible, but what if,
Well,
what if?
there are those, oh man, what are they called? They look fake as hell. They look like they have baggy pants. They're white, and it's just like this head with these long legs, like something on stilts.
The walkers,
the night walkers.
Yes, the night walkers. And I saw that, and I said, "This has got to be fake."
Right.
And then I watched the guys in fake. What is it called?
Factor
fake. Try to replicate it, and be completely, flustered with it. They're like, "I don't know how they did this," and I'm like, "That's interesting because."
Yeah.
I thought this would have been an easy fake. I guess it's not.
I did too, and I saw that same episode, and they had a budget and everything.
Yeah,
they couldn't do it. And then there's been other
other
videos
sightings
of it, like it's either Yosemite or Yellowstone, where they observed them.
And there's been another one 11 miles from the original and 35 miles from the original that in the same similar area, because we don't know how far is for whatever other beings may be.
But if real, that's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. What the hell is that?
Right. We are going to have to get together again, and I really, really want to dive deep into the missing people phenomenon and what we think could be some of the things, because I don't think it's one thing. I don't think
it's not one thing.
It's not. And I just think it's so interesting to look at a couple of different cases, and the ones that get me are the ones that had cell phones and people hear the wind be like a pulling up and away, or different sounds.
Like the McCabe voicemail where he's like, you can hear him. He's panting. He's talking, and then you hear him. Sounds like he's drowning, and there's another voice talking to him, like, "Stop."
So I think that was that drowning sound might have been him being tased, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Could be.
Oh,
now there's some other things about that that aren't weird or supernatural. He was involved in some stuff because of some country, I think, where he was from. There was some political stuff involved, so. Yeah. That may have been something else.
There's always stuff like that too, the underlying things. But
gosh, to it.
If anybody has seen, and I hate that he shall not be named, did that one called The Hunters. That's the one where the bow hunter saw the thing, the predator looking, chameleon looking deal. But the hunter that heard the snapping and was just sitting there, and everybody was spaced out. So, maybe we can bring up a couple of those ones where
Seriah had me on his show recently. And it's not David Politis that I have a problem with. It's his fans that are just rabid. Seriah, in your comments, somebody's like, Seriah, why didn't you call this guy for plagiarizing David Politis?
Yeah.
And your comment was, I don't think you know what plagiarism is.
Yes, exactly. To be fair, neither does David, because he was the one that started that. He started it with Steph Young saying, because someone told him that she plagiarized his stuff, and he just went and didn't even look at her stuff and just started saying she was plagiarizing him. And
there's as much difference as night and day.
Yeah.
I've been on your show with Steph Young too. And it's not even in the same ballpark.
No.
And all these cases that people, that's David's case. He talked about that. I followed Dennis Martin from the time I was 6 years old.
Right.
Same with Trini Gibson, Thelma Pauline Melton. Those aren't David's cases. If anybody should copyright those cases, it's the families that stuff happened to. And they don't do it. If it was my kid, I'd want everybody to talk about it.
Right.
And that's what Politis used to say. He used to tell people, I've heard him on Coast to Coast, if you can't buy the books, tell a friend, talk about it. We need to boost the signal and get people talking about it. Well, he's changed his tune a little bit now. So,
well, not only that, but if he really wanted to get this information out there, he'd put the books on Amazon. He'd put them out as ebooks. He'd put them out as audiobooks. He would make them more available.
He's doing what he accused the National Park Service of doing, withholding the information and charging for it.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way,
speaking of Steph Young, have you heard from her lately or had her on lately, Seriah?
I talked to her not too long ago. She's actually taking care of family. I think a lot of
I knew
people
she had
did
something
that
going on because I had messaged her and she was just kind of very short answers and stuff. And she and I were fast friends at one point and talked a
Yeah.
lot. I knew something was going on with
I
her.
think
Something
she's just
personal.
overwhelmed and focused
But
on something
I'd
right
love it if we could get her back on a show or
That'd
even
be
on
great.
here.
So would
And,
I. I'm just glad someone's heard from her because it's been over a year since
Yeah.
I've heard from her.
Same here.
And she didn't answer the last couple of emails unless they went into junk or something like that. But
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was very brief because I did
Yeah.
the same
Same.
thing. I wanted to reach out and have her on, you know.
Yeah, it's back when I was doing the live shows on Missing Person Mysteries, and she would have been a perfect fit. It would have helped her get a good boost
Right.
and everything. And finally, I was messaging her, didn't hear back, and finally I put in like, Steph, I need to talk to you. It's important. And then she just writes back like, what is it? And I said, I want you to come on my show so I can promote your books and stuff.
And-
Never heard back from her. So.
Yeah, right now she's just not doing anything and then she gets focused. And I can understand that.
I
Sometimes
understand.
when you're even
Yeah.
writing a book, you have to just focus right in on that.
Yeah.
And then family, and then the changes.
And she
and
told me
everything.
that before, that she concentrates on her writing. She says because I won't mention what she did in her past life. People probably know because she talked about it. But she's like, this is what I used to do. Now do you understand why I don't want to go back to that? And I've got to keep these books coming out because I love
Sure.
what I do now.
That's
That
great.
makes sense.
And that's the important thing. If you can love what you do, I mean, and if you have to do something you don't like to get to what you love doing, then you're on the right course, man. You
Yeah.
found a way to make that
That
happen.
was what my dad told me years
Yeah.
and years and years ago. Find something that you can do that you love to do and can get paid for, and you'll never work another day in your life. And that's where I'm at now. I love YouTube. We just passed 211,000 subscribers.
Nice.
Wow.
As long as there's
That's
still
great.
a YouTube and still an interest in the stuff that I'm doing and my books and stuff, I'll never have to work again.
And I think it's helping
and I'm so thankful.
Yeah.
And it is. And I get so many compliments. Your voice relaxes me. People with
Mm-hmm.
PTSD and chronic pain, fibromyalgia, insomnia. You help me sleep. One guy said last night he put my voice on and his dog settled down from the fireworks and was able to rest. So
Oh, wow.
that's that's a calling. That's a blessing, that's
It
been
is.
given to me, and then likewise I can bless other people with it.
It's absolutely true, man. And everybody in this chat, we love each and every one of you guys. And yep, night crawlers. That's right. That's right. And, coming together and having this kind of energy and stuff like, good night, Blue. We love you, darling.
We're raising the vibration. We're levitating the
raising-
Pentagon
yeah.
right now.
Right. I love that story. I absolutely love it. We'll have to do a whole episode on him.
We're levitating the
fun
YouTube
stuff he did.
headquarters in
Yep.
in
God
just
bless
outside San Francisco.
the trailblazers, but I think there was a lot of trailblazers we hadn't, heard of.
Are
in
you
the
talking about the
past.
ball team?
Yeah, no, any of them. And, the people with the podcast that keep going and, keep trying to find the information and digging around in those things and having people like Seriah on and looking outside the box and, just having people in the chat put in and then people listen and leave comments. I mean, it's definitely something. It's almost like a living, breathing thing because I get comments from stuff I did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that today.
And just to be
That
honest,
made me look
I
at it
don't like the
different.
sound of my own voice. I never
Yeah.
have. It sounds different in my head than when I record it and play it back.
I
I'm
think
like, doesn't
everybody's
sound like that.
does.
Yeah, that's true of
Look,
everyone.
Look in
Yeah.
the comments; they're accurate. AJK, you have a gift, and it's absolutely true.
That's
Gray
sweet.
Wolf, you are a blessing. ABC, a gift
Yep.
indeed.
Mhm.
Well, see, I'm gonna take that and run with it. As long as I have a voice to speak, I'm
Yep.
gonna bless people that bless me. And stuff.
Absolutely.
And for those of you that like to hear my voice and would like to hear me just telling stories and not necessarily doing missing persons and mysteries or something scary, stay tuned. Should be ready next week. I'll let you know, and I'll make an official announcement probably here next Monday about a new thing that I've started and looking forward to. And if you just want to listen to me talk, I'm not reading the phone book or cereal box, although I've had people say they would listen to that. I may catch that theory. I may read the phone book.
podcast.
Well, I was going to do that one day on a show. I had a phone book from 1950s,
I'd
a little
listen.
town in upstate New York, and I had the modern phone book. And I was going to go through and talk about places that were there then, that are still there now, and there were a few. So see, I could even find a way to make the phone book
You can make it
interesting.
work.
Maybe.
I got lost for an hour in looking up my granddaddy's. It came up in an ancestry something or other. Anyway, I got to look at the 1928 phone book. My granddaddy was listed, and everybody's profession was listed. So it had his name and it said
And the
machinist.
profession.
Then his address.
How many people live there?
Yeah.
The address.
Only his, though. Not anybody else in the house. The damn president of the United States could be living in that house. But it was going to be machinist because it was his name on that phone book. Interesting how things change, man. It's so cool. It's so cool.
So maybe
Ryan,
just as
where
a
did
lark,
the road
I'll do
go?
that. Go ahead.
Tell us
Sorry.
where to find you, darling. And
Where
what
did
you
the
do.
road go.com. And
There
if you
it
want to hear
is.
my music show, it's thelastexit.org.
Outstanding.
That is the most awesome music show. I've heard so much on there. I've even messaged Seriah when one of those shows was going on. It's like, do you have a playlist? Do you have a playlist? What was that song? What was the third song you played? I have to know.
Yep.
There you go. There. See, everybody's saying they listen, Steve. I get that phone book out and start reading, darling.
Right.
I love you both. It's
Don't
been
be
absolutely
surprised.
wonderful spending 4th
go.
of July with you here. There's been fireworks. We love you, guys. Chat. I hope you're out there having
Same
a
with the
good
chat.
night. Yep. And
All
we
my
love
friends,
you so much.
all Cisco's people, all our people.
All the fireworks are
Seriah,
going off around
it's
me. I
always
can
a
barely hear you
pleasure,
guys.
my friend.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's been great. I can't wait to have you on again, sweetie. We'll dig into that missing, stuff. So pull out a
Okay.
couple of your favorite stories. We'll bounce them off of you guys. I'm really interested in the ones where they can hear the people, but they can't find them, and
Right,
vice
yes.
versa. And
Yep.
that, because to me, that gets into dimensions and portals, and I'm trying so hard to learn about that and, that type of thing, because it's just it's so intriguing, so interesting. So listen,
Agreed.
guys, I'm thinking tomorrow night I've got a little extra holiday for you. We're going to do a murder mystery Ouija board story. It's an old CBS mystery, and we can listen in along if you guys want to join me. That'll be tomorrow night, so live chat will be there. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a really good one, so I figured I'd do a little something for extra for the holiday, because I love you guys. So everybody, we're on our way out of here. Listen, just make good choices. Keep your feet under the covers. Keep your closet doors shut, because there's things that go bump in the night. We don't know what they are, but they're bumping.
They're
baby.
out there. Let's go through the gate. Who's ready to follow?
Ooh, I follow Steve right through that gate. I absolutely would. Okay, here. All I gotta do is find it. I've lost it again, and here we go. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
It's Independence Day, July 2nd, 1776. Wait, that doesn't make sense. July 2nd? Why not July 4th? Well, there's a story there to be had, and let's talk about it for a moment. On July 2nd, 1776, John Adams said, "The second day of July, 1776 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations, from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward, forevermore." July 2nd is the day that the debate finally ended. The Continental Congress will accept what Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson put together. After about a day and a half of debate over how harsh they were coming down on the British people themselves, and over the debate of slavery, on July 4th, 1776, the Founding Fathers will officially adopt what we know as our Declaration of Independence.
okay? This is a song of the men, women, and children who got Ireland their freedom back in 1916, okay? Because, New Jersey, if we can have freedom in Ireland, believe me, we can have freedom anywhere on this planet, okay? So as I said, this is